Picture this, right? It is 2 a.m.
Oh boy.
Yeah, the house is completely quiet, the streetlights are sort of slicing through the blinds, and you are wide awake, just staring at the ceiling.
It is the absolute worst feeling.
It really is. You're tossing and turning, obsessively replaying this totally minor conversation you had like 12 hours ago.
Yeah.
You're analyzing every pause, every inflection, wondering, what did they really mean by that?
Right, or maybe you're on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. You're meticulously planning tomorrow's itinerary in these endless, exhausting mental loops.
Exactly. You're solving problems that haven't even happened yet.
And it is such a universal experience, but a remarkably draining one. I mean, that sheer inability to turn the cognitive engine off when you desperately need rest.
And that is exactly what we are getting into today for this deep dive. We have a really illuminating piece of source material. It's an article by Sabine Voss, published on May 1st, 2026.
Yeah, and it really centers on the work and insights of a psychologist and coach named Ramón Schlemmbach.
When I read through his insights, I immediately thought of how overthinking actually feels in the moment. It is like having 20 browser tabs open in your brain at the exact same time.
That is a perfect way to describe it.
And worse, like 3 of them are playing audio, but you have absolutely no idea which ones. So you're just frantically clicking around trying to find the source of the noise while your internal cooling fan just spins out of control.
The cognitive load of all those open tabs is just immense. So our mission today is to take Schlemmbach's insights and really unpack the underlying mechanics of that spinning cooling fan.
Right, we want to figure out the why.
Exactly. We are going to explore exactly why our brains trap us in these exhausting mental loops. But, we aren't just going to diagnose the problem.
No, we want to give you actual solutions.
Right. We want to equip you, the listener, with a specific psychologist-approved toolkit to short-circuit that cycle, break the loop, and get you back into the present moment.
But, before we can fix the machine, we need to understand how it is actually broken. And Schlemmbach offers a really precise definition of overthinking that helps map this out.
He really does. He highlights that when we fall into these severe rumination traps, the brain almost always drags us violently out of the present moment.
Yeah, it just pulls you right out of the now.
Exactly. And it drops us into one of two incredibly unhelpful timelines, the past or the future. It is basically unauthorized mental time travel.
Unauthorized mental time travel. I love that.
And the worst part is you're traveling to timelines where you have absolutely zero agency. Let's look at past-focused overthinking first.
Okay, lay it on me.
So Schlemmbach points out that when we obsess over historical situations, like that 2 a.m. replay of a conversation, we are burning active cognitive energy on scenarios we can no longer solve.
Right, because the data is locked.
Exactly. The event is completely over. But the brain just keeps churning as if a solution can retroactively change the outcome. The mechanism is entirely futile.
Which is so maddening because you logically know you cannot go back in time and deliver that perfect comeback you just thought of. You are spending all this energy on a locked file.
Yeah, it's exhausting. And then you have the future-focused timeline. This one centers on scenarios that we actually could theoretically influence through action.
Like prepping for a meeting or a trip.
Right. We could prepare, we could reach out, we could plan, but instead of taking a tangible step, we endlessly push the action away by just worrying about it.
So we build these elaborate catastrophic models of tomorrow rather than just executing a single helpful task today.
Exactly. We are either trying to edit a movie that has already been released, or we're writing a script for a sequel we are too terrified to actually film.
That is such a good way to frame it. But, there is a really fascinating exception mentioned in the source. Present moment overthinking.
Oh, this one is rough.
It really is. Schlemmbach brings up the date scenario, and I think anyone listening will instantly recognize this feeling. You are physically sitting right across from someone. It is happening right now.
But you aren't actually there at all.
No, not at all. Your internal monologue is just screaming. Like, is my hair okay? Did I just say the right thing? Am I talking way too much?
You are completely detached from the person sitting in front of you.
Because you're so busy auditing your own performance in real time.
And that brings us to the proximity issue. If we synthesize these 3 modes, past, future, or that highly anxious present moment auditing, the unifying tragedy of overthinking becomes really clear.
It makes you entirely unpresent.
Exactly. You are so deep inside your own head that you completely lose the ability to actually engage with or even enjoy the physical reality you are occupying. You're basically become a ghost haunting your own life.
A ghost haunting your own life. Man, that is bleak. But let me push back on this entire premise for a second.
Sure, go ahead.
the human brain is a ruthlessly efficient organ, right?
Mhm.
It doesn't usually waste massive amounts of energy for no reason. So if overthinking makes us this miserable and so detached from our own lives, why on earth did our brains evolve to do it? There has to be a structural reason.
That is a great question. It's totally natural to assume this is some sort of species-wide evolutionary survival tactic, but Schlembach's most profound insight is that it is actually intensely personal.
Wait, personal how?
Well, overthinking isn't some ancient evolutionary glitch. It is a highly specific learned coping mechanism. It is literally designed to deal with deep-seated childhood conditionings.
Oh, wow. So we aren't talking about ancient humans scanning the horizon for predators here. We're talking about personal survival tactics from when we were kids.
Exactly. We developed these mental loops as psychological shields when we were young, and we never uninstalled the software.
The legacy software is still running.
Right. And Schlembach identifies two primary root causes, these specific conditionings that drive this behavior straight into adulthood. The first one he calls an inadequacy conditioning, or in the original German, Unzulänglichkeitsprägung.
Unzulänglichkeitsprogramm. Okay, so what does inadequacy conditioning actually look like in practice? Like, how does a kid catch that?
It essentially stems from a deeply ingrained fundamental feeling that you are just not okay. A child might internalize this from, say, hypercritical parents or from an environment where love felt completely conditional on perfect behavior.
So they carry this heavy, chronic baseline assumption that they are inherently flawed.
Yes. And because of that, they develop an intense, paralyzing fear of making mistakes. To a child's developing brain, a mistake isn't just a minor error. It is absolute confirmation of their fundamental inadequacy.
The stakes for every little action become artificially massive. Like, if I drop my milk, I am a fundamentally bad person.
Exactly. And that black and white thinking creates severe, future-focused overthinking later in life. A child's brain lacks the complex emotional regulation required to process feelings of worthlessness.
So it relies on hypervigilance instead.
Right. The brain says, if I can pre-calculate every single variable of tomorrow, I won't make a mistake and I won't be unmasked as inadequate. And Schlembach makes a very stark point here. People who have internalized that they are fundamentally okay, regardless of whether they perform a task perfectly, they simply do not suffer from this specific brand of future-focused overthinking.
Wait, I need to stop you there because I am struggling a bit with where we draw the line.
Okay, what do you mean?
Let's say it is Sunday night, and I am agonizing over a massive slide deck for a Monday morning presentation. If I don't stress over every detail, I might give a terrible presentation, embarrass myself, and damage my career.
Right.
So isn't some level of anxiety and future planning just a necessary driver for professional success?
That's a fair point, but there is a critical distinction between productive preparation and ruminative overthinking. Productive preparation actually has a stopping point.
Like you finish the task and you're done.
Exactly. You review the slides, you fix a typo, you close the laptop, and you go to sleep. You are solving a tangible problem. Overthinking has no stopping point because the problem it is trying to solve isn't actually the slide deck.
So the slides are just a decoy.
The slide deck is totally the proxy. The actual anxiety engine running in the background is that primal fear. It's saying, if this presentation isn't flawless, they will see that I am an imposter.
Oh, man.
The overthinking is just a desperate attempt to control an uncontrollable emotional fear. It is your brain running a legacy software program designed to protect a vulnerable child, misapplied to a corporate boardroom.
That reframes things completely.
Mm.
So overthinking is basically wearing heavy emotional armor from a childhood war to a present-day picnic.
That is a brilliant way to put it.
It's not about the work, it's about the worth. If you know you have inherent worth, a typo doesn't destroy your identity.
Exactly.
Well, if you're listening right now and feeling a little called out by that future-focused inadequacy loop, just hold tight, because Schlembach outlines a second type of conditioning for the past-focused overthinkers.
Yes, he does. The second root cause is submission conditioning, or Unterwerfungsprägung. This typically develops in individuals who were frequently or unpredictably punished in childhood.
Okay, so very different environment.
Right. As a survival mechanism, the child's brain learns to over-adapt to the adults around them. They learn that the only way to stay safe in a volatile environment is to keep everyone else happy and completely suppress their own needs.
They learn that having boundaries is dangerous.
Exactly. They actively struggle with setting any boundaries at all. And because they constantly swallow their own boundaries to keep the peace in their daily lives, they end up suffering from intense past-focused overthinking.
I see.
Their mental loops always sound like, I should have spoken up, or why didn't I just say no, or I should have defended myself.
Let's ground this in a real scenario for a second. Let's say you're at a family dinner. An uncle makes a subtly insulting comment about your career, and in the moment, you just laugh it off to avoid conflict.
A very common situation.
Right. But at 2 a.m., you are wide awake, absolutely furious with yourself, replaying the moment and imagining all the assertive things you could have said.
Yes. That 2 a.m. loop is the psychological toll of the submission conditioning. The brain is trying to retroactively process the betrayal of your own boundary.
Wow. You over-adapted in the moment to stay safe, which is a reflex ingrained since childhood. But the adult part of you recognizes the self-betrayal, resulting in this punishing cycle of past-focused rumination.
It is so much like running a legacy antivirus software from 20 years ago on a brand new computer.
How so?
Well, the software is constantly scanning for threats that don't exist anymore, draining the battery, and making it impossible to actually use the computer for anything else. The childhood threat is gone, but the background process is still eating up all your RAM.
Exactly. The defense mechanism is still operating at maximum capacity, entirely detached from your current reality.
Understanding this deep structural conditioning is incredibly validating, but it also raises a massive practical problem for me.
What's that?
If I am stuck in that 2 a.m. loop, knowing my childhood operating system is outdated doesn't magically put me to sleep. So how do we actually manually override this? How do we force quit the program when we feel that spiral starting? Well, Schlemmbach provides a highly practical set of manual overrides for exactly those moments. We can think of these as the solo toolkit for getting back to the here and now.
I love a good toolkit.
The first and most immediate tool is present moment meditation, but specifically grounded in the physical environment.
Okay, but when you say meditation, most people picture sitting cross-legged on a mountain,
Yeah.
you know, chanting and trying to empty their minds, which feels impossible when your brain is already screaming at you.
Oh, absolutely. Trying to empty a frantic mind usually just creates way more anxiety. This is highly active sensory grounding. It starts very simply.
What's the first step?
The moment you catch yourself spiraling, you stop and ask yourself, either out loud or in your head, what do I see right now? You force your cognitive attention away from the abstract thoughts and onto the concrete physical reality of your environment.
So literally noting, like, there is a blue coffee mug on the table. There's a crack in the drywall. But what if noticing a coffee mug isn't enough to break a severe loop? I feel like I can easily stare at a mug while my brain continues to panic about tomorrow's meeting.
That happens. And if the simple version fails, Schlemmbach recommends scaling up to a specific intensive protocol called the 5-4-3-2-1 method.
Okay, walk me through that.
You actively look around and identify 5 things you can clearly see. Then you focus your hearing and identify 4 distinct things you can hear.
Like the hum of the refrigerator, a distant siren, that sort of thing.
Exactly. Then 3 things you can physically feel. The source highlights a great example here. Noticing the feeling of wind on your skin or the specific texture of your shirt against your shoulders.
Got it.
Then 2 things you can smell. And finally, 1 thing you can taste.
Let's really dig into the mechanics of this. Why does counting smells and textures actually work? Like, why couldn't I just turn on a YouTube video to distract myself?
Because watching a video is a passive distraction. The anxiety engine can easily run in the background while you stare at a screen. The 5-4-3-2-1 method, on the other hand, is basically a hostile takeover of your brain's processing bandwidth.
A hostile takeover. I like the sound of that.
Think about the neurological effort required to isolate 2 distinct smells in a standard room. It forces your brain to shift resources away from the amygdala, which is the fear center driving the overthinking, and reallocate them to your sensory processing centers.
Oh, yeah.
Your sensory perception is occupying so much neurological real estate that the brain simply lacks the bandwidth to continue ruminating on tomorrow's presentation. You literally starve the abstract anxiety of its processing power by forcing the system to render the physical present.
You are giving the processor a high-priority, resource-heavy task, so it literally has to drop the background processes. That makes incredible sense. So what else is in this solo toolkit?
The second highly recommended tool is the brain dump. When the thoughts are swirling like a tornado and you just can't sort them, you sit down and physically write out everything that is floating in your mind.
Just a free-for-all.
Yep. No filtering, no structuring, no bullet points, just raw data transfer from your head straight onto the paper.
Going back to our computer analogy earlier, this is exactly like taking RAM out of a struggling machine. When your brain is trying to hold onto 15 different worries, reminders, and anxieties, it is using a massive amount of active processing power just to keep them suspended in your consciousness so you don't forget them.
Yes, it is an exhausting juggling act for the prefrontal cortex.
But the moment you write them down, you're physically offloading that data to an external hard drive.
Yeah.
Your brain literally looks at the paper and registers, okay, the paper is holding this information now. I don't have to keep juggling it.
Exactly. The relief of just not having to hold the thoughts anymore is almost instantaneous.
It's like putting down a heavy backpack.
You are outsourcing the cognitive load. For listeners who really struggle with that late-night racing mind, keeping a notepad by the bed for a physical brain dump can be completely transformative.
That's a great tip.
Now, sensory grounding and brain dumping are excellent tools, but they do share a limitation. They are designed for when you are alone.
Which brings us back to that date scenario we talked about earlier. Writing things down works at 2 a.m., but if I am sitting across from someone at dinner, I can't exactly start sniffing my salad, touching the tablecloth, and counting the chairs out loud to ground myself.
Probably not a great idea.
Right. That might successfully cure the overthinking, but it is definitely going to ruin the date.
Social dynamics require a completely different approach. You cannot retreat into a solo, introspective exercise when the entire point of the moment is to be engaged with another human being.
Makes sense.
For this, Schlemmbach provides a targeted strategy we can call the social override. It is elegantly simple, yet incredibly difficult in practice.
Okay, I'm ready. What is it?
When you catch yourself analyzing your own performance in a social setting, consciously choose to genuinely, honestly listen to the other person.
Wait, isn't that just basic manners? I mean, we're already supposed to be listening when someone is talking to us.
We are supposed to be, sure. But when we are overthinking, we aren't actually listening. We are just waiting for our turn to speak, while simultaneously analyzing how our face looks, worrying about our posture, and pre-planning our next clever response.
Ouch. Yeah, that is very true.
The social override requires you to actively shift your intense analytical focus entirely away from yourself and onto your counterpart. You must become intensely curious about them.
So instead of thinking, does my laugh sound weird, I have to force my internal monologue to ask, what exactly do they mean by that story? Like, I need to ask a follow-up question to understand their motivation.
Exactly. And the psychological result of this deliberate shift is profound. Schlemmbach notes that when you become genuinely interested in the other person, the pressure to perform instantly vanishes.
Because you aren't the focus anymore.
Right. The human brain struggles to hold two competing intense focal points. You cannot simultaneously be a curious, engaged observer of someone else and a harsh, anxious critic of yourself.
It is brilliantly ironic, honestly.
Yeah.
By making an entire interaction completely about the other person, you accidentally cure your own social anxiety. You basically save yourself by forgetting yourself.
I love that phrase.
Curiosity is literally the antidote to self-consciousness.
It brings you immediately back to the present moment, which, as we established earlier, is the ultimate goal here. However, as we wrap up our discussion of these tools, the source includes a vital, overarching caveat that we really must address.
Okay, what's the catch?
These tools, the 5-4-3-2-1 method, the brain dump, the social override, they are incredibly effective mechanisms for managing the symptoms in the moment. But if chronic overthinking is severely burdening your life, they're ultimately just Band-Aids.
Because they don't actually uninstall that legacy software. They don't fix the underlying inadequacy or submission conditioning.
Exactly. If those deep-seated conditionings are driving your daily life and causing you persistent distress, Schlemmbach's ultimate recommendation is to seek professional help.
Therapy, basically.
Yes, a therapist or professional guide is often necessary to safely uncover those childhood imprints and do the hard work of permanently resolving them. The manual overrides keep the machine running day to day, but eventually you have to rewrite the code. You have to heal the root to stop the weed from growing back.
That makes total sense. So let's just recap the journey we've been on today so you can take these tools with you. We started by redefining overthinking. It isn't just a bad habit. It is an active theft of your present moment, dragging you into an unchangeable past or an uncontrollable future.
Right.
We explored the why behind the worry, discovering that it's often a legacy defense mechanism forged in childhood to protect us from feelings of deep inadequacy or a lack of boundaries.
Which is such a massive paradigm shift.
Absolutely. But most importantly, we learned how to manually override the system. We can hijack our brain's bandwidth with the 5-4-3-2-1 sensory method. We can offload our mental RAM onto a piece of paper, and we can conquer social anxiety by turning the spotlight of our curiosity outward onto the people around us.
It really is a powerful shift in perspective, moving from feeling like a victim of your own thoughts to an active manager of your cognitive bandwidth.
Definitely.
And as we close out this deep dive, there is one final concept that builds on Schlemmbach's work, something that really crystallizes the stakes of this entire conversation.
I'd love to hear it.
The source tells us that overthinking is essentially a childhood shield keeping us out of the present moment. But that raises a fascinating question for you to mull over today, long after you finish listening.
Okay.
If our thoughts are constantly frantically trying to protect us from feeling inadequate or boundaryless, what vulnerability are we exposing the moment we finally put that shield down? When the inner monologue finally goes completely quiet, who are we actually afraid to meet in that silence?
Wow. That is a heavy, incredible question to leave off on. Who are we actually afraid to meet in the silence? Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. I hope tonight at 2 a.m., if you find yourself staring at the ceiling and listening to that mental fan spin up, you remember that you have the tools to shut down the browser tabs, force quit the legacy software, and finally get some rest. We will catch you on the next one.